If you bought a budget rifle, chances are you bought a budget scope for it, and you're going to need some budget rings that actually work. Today we're going to take a look at some from SVBony, a company you probably never heard of, but you should. Okay, we have a set of SVBony scope rings, and the packaging on this one, well, I think it would be polite to say the packaging is minimal. There's definitely not any protection in this packaging. It's just really thin cardboard, but fortunately this did ship in a bubble wrap padded container, so there's no risk of the actual rings getting damaged, but just something to be aware of. You're not buying this for the packaging. So SVBony, or SVBony, is I believe the correct pronunciation, SVBony scope rings. They come in a variety of sizes for the type of mount you have. These are the 11mm dovetail bases, and they all are 1-inch diameter. So these are really made for air guns or rimfire, light rimfire. Bear in mind, back in the day, and I'm probably dating myself here, almost all scopes were 1-inch tubes, and all of them only pretty much had one screw. Nowadays, as scopes have gotten bigger with 30mm, 34mm size tubes, the glass has accordingly gotten larger, and more glass means more weight. So if you want a scope ring for heavier, larger scopes, you definitely want to get ones that have more than one holding screw. But for 1-inch tubes, these are perfectly fine. These are the 11mm bases, and this is nice that they have a lightning cutout. Also, potentially you could use these as see-through mounts depending on the height of your iron sights, of your open sights. You could look through them and use these while you have a scope on them. The bell on the scope will probably obscure it, but in any case, this is a quick detach relatively. You can unscrew this with your finger or with a coin or a screwdriver. But I love the fact, cheaper ones you'll see they'll just use a stamped metal counterpiece for tightening along your dovetail. This is a nice big solid milled piece of aluminum, and let me just check that that is aluminum. Yeah, so this is a magnetic charger base. Oh, yeah, this is metal, but the base itself is aluminum or some non-ferrous metal. Let's take a look at another base here. Now this is a low Picatinny size, and you can see the differences here in terms of its height, and you can see the base is much wider. So this is a Picatinny type of base. This is a low Weaver. It is a low 11mm dovetail. You can see these two bases are the same width, and this is low, so there's no room to do the lightning cutout there. And finally, we have our high Picatinny. You can see here, Picatinny, and it also has a similar cutout. This is a little bit taller. You can see here, this one's a bit taller, and the Picatinny, and it has the lightning cutouts. They do have a little bit of this friction tape on the inside to keep the tubes from slipping. A lot of cheaper scope ring makers put those on there just because their CNC and their milling is not precise enough to have their rings align, and we're going to check that next. Alright, let's start with these SVBony Picatinny high risers, and I'm going to attach them to my scope testing platform here. Now, this may sound pedantic or redundant to anybody who knows even a little bit about firearms, but I just need to point this out to anybody on the staff at YouTube who reviews videos, because the previous video that I posted was rejected by YouTube, citing that I was showing gun modification, and by that I assume they mean illegal gun modification. Now, I'd just like to point out here to any uninformed viewer that a rifle scope needs to be mounted on scope rings or aim mount, and you need a rifle scope or some other optic or sight to use a firearm properly, because you cannot aim a firearm safely unless you have properly aligned sights. Many sporting guns and hunting rifles come pre-installed with scopes from the factory, and of course the accompanying scope rings or mounts, so these are not gun modifications, these are standard parts, normal parts. Not an illegal or even questionable modification. Scope rings and scopes do get damaged over time and need to be replaced, so if anything, this is a demonstration of repair and maintenance. Sorry for that long explanation of what should have been obvious, but I'd also like to point out that what we're mounting it on is not a firearm, but a blue block of wood. Now, I'm cinching down 2 metal testing rods. They're just solid, straight rods of metal that come to a point and show how well or misaligned these 2 rings are, and son of a gun, they're aligned. Well, I shouldn't be surprised, since even budget rings nowadays are manufactured using computer-controlled milling machines, so there you go. Now, full disclosure, SVBony sent me these rings to test and evaluate, so I have no control over whether or not they sent me the best pick from the lot or if this is typical of their quality. If you own SVBony rings, please leave me a comment and let me know. But SVBony has had a good history of customer service. They're based out of Hong Kong, and they're actually better known for making scientific instruments, astronomical optics, microscopes, and such, albeit budget scientific instruments, but, you know, those require a bit more precision than your typical hunting gear. Next, let's take a look at the 11mm dovetail high riser mounts, and as I cinch down these scope rings, we can see that the testing bars are surprisingly well aligned, just a hair off, but bear in mind this is on a nearly 40-year-old plinking rifle that is well used, and I'm pretty sure that rail was hand milled. That misalignment could be the rifle more than the rings as far as I know, and I'm confident that when I mount a scope on this that the tolerances are enough that I'll be well within minute of squirrel as far as accuracy. To test the rings, I mounted an SVBony SV177 3 to 12 power scope. I took it to the range and tested it with 50 rounds at 100 yards, and it shot about as well as I typically shoot with cheap bulk ammo. Afterwards, I checked the rings. They didn't loosen up. They were still on solid. Now, before I get into my final thoughts and insights after testing these scope rings, I'd just like to ask you to please hit the like and subscribe buttons. It just takes a second, it doesn't cost you anything, but it really helps boost the presence of this channel and this video on YouTube. And as you heard, you know, they like to suppress and reject 2A content. This is one way that you can help fight that. And I also create non-firearms gadget reviews on my other channel, Moondog R&D. Check it out. There are many shooters that will roll their eyes at the mere mention of the word budget scope or rings, and I'm one of them if it's a high-end, large-caliber precision rifle. But that doesn't apply to all rifles or budgets. If you're shooting air guns or 22s or other light recoiling rounds, do you honestly need $30, $50, $100 scope rings on a budget build or plinker? But that's just one opinion. Please share yours. Leave me a comment. And if you're interested in picking up these rings or this scope, you can find links and more information on my blog, moondogindustries.com. Thanks for watching. Moondog, out. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, please share it on forums, Facebook, Reddit, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, MeWe, whatever social media you're on. And if you want to see all of my videos, check out moondogindustries.com.